I'm recording this video at the very beginning of the semester, but the topic is in how we can maximize the results that we get on our end of course evaluations. I'm going to show you a couple different things that we can do to enhance the response that we get from students by using AI in different ways. But it's important for us to start to address this at the very beginning of the semester, as opposed to the very end of the semester when it would be too late. First, we have to think about, well, how are we getting evaluated? So we need to know what are those questions, what is being asked of the students in that end of course evaluation. So we need those questions, so we can get that by looking at previous end of course evaluations that we might have received, or we might be able to get an actual document that tells us the questions that are being asked from someone like the Center for Teaching and Learning, or from a program chair, or maybe even a dean. So that's important in order for us to know exactly what is being asked of our students. That's step one. Then we need to go through those questions and then think about how can we address those? How can we ensure that our course is designed in such a way that it will get the best results possible? Let's start off with looking at an end of course evaluation. So I have one here. And you can see how this is broken up, dealing with the course and assignments, as well as the instructor specifically. And then at the end, there's a section there for any free comment that a student might have. Generally, this is what's presented in end of course evaluations. And usually there's some sort of Likert scale going from strongly agree to strongly disagree. The first question we have here is dealing with the course pace, meaning how's the information presented? So I've made several different other videos talking about how we can use AI as an instructional designer. We can post a question to the AI asking about anything associated with creating our course. But here it's specifically asking about the pace. How often are we giving assignments? How much information are we presenting? Well, one suggestion that I have is for you to break down your course into different sections. What I like to do is I might like to make a schedule so that all my students know exactly what's happening. They know week by week what I'm doing, and then it's broken down in that way. What you have to look at is, what are your SLOs? What are your student learning outcomes? Once I know that, then I can logically break it down in a way that it presents and addresses those SLOs in a way that makes sense as far as the pacing. Once you have something like that broken down into how you plan to express or teach those different SLOs, then you can send that to the AI as well. You can ask the AI to review your overall course schedule and to see if there's any suggestions, any thoughts as far as how it might change. Here's an example of that type of prompt. Again, that's just one idea, one utilization of the AI to help you with the overall process of end of course evaluations. So you have that, and then you can go on to something else by looking at the next question. So another question that often gets posed are things like the course load. How much are you putting in there? How much information is being presented to the student? What are the requirements for reading, for assignments, all these other things? First, we have to understand, well, what's the requirement? In most universities, usually there's some sort of policy associated with that. Again, it varies, but generally the way it works is for every credit, 1 hour credit, and again, this is the American system, for every 1 hour credit that the course is, it generally requires about 3 hours of study time from the student. So use that as sort of a general guide, and then balance things out as far as how much you're requiring of the student. And the student needs to know this from the very beginning, and you need to balance it so that when they answer this type of question, that, hey, the course load was appropriate, then they can answer in a good way that's favorable to you because you've expressed it to them from the very beginning, and then you've balanced it out throughout the entire course. So that's important. One way to address this is to also write this out as far as how you plan to do this within your schedule, and then feed that into an AI and say, hey, does this make sense? Do you think that a student would be able to do this within a week's time? How is the course load distributed? And it can give you some great feedback on that as well. Another one deals with the relevancy of the material presented within the course. This is a number one thing because relevancy, that ties directly in with motivation. If you want your students motivated, then you have to be as relevant as possible. So you need to make sure that your information is modern, it's up to date, it is very relevant to them personally as well as on an overall level. But the more relevancy that you can make, the better. So you can pose that question directly to AI. Hey, what are some relevant aspects of this that I could pose to my students? And you can get even deeper with it because you can ask the AI, I'm teaching a class on X and my students are from these different majors. How can I make my content relevant to them? Pose that type of prompt, something like this, and you'll get some great results where, again, you can personalize this information directly to those type of students. Feel free to manipulate that type of prompt just so that you can get that information to be more salient to those individual students. Again, motivation is really important and relevancy ties directly into that. Another part of that deals with what is it that you're even talking about in class. We have to make sure that we are staying within the lane of that course. That's kind of another part of what that question is asking. So if you are telling stories, which I highly recommend in your class, make sure that it's relevant to the course objectives and make sure that you're explicit to the student. Don't just be implicit in generally they should know or understand what your message is within that story. No, you want to make sure that you're very explicit at the very end, make sure that you summarize, make sure that you tell the student why this applies to this, why it's very relevant, and why this ties in directly with those student learning objectives. The next couple of questions deals with making sure that the instructions are very clear and that the rubrics are very clear as well. I very much try to get instructors to see that we have to be, again, explicit with what we're telling them to do. So that means that the instructions are written out. We also go over it in class. And then I use rubrics for every single assignment. The AI is really powerful here because it can help you in the creation of rubrics. Put in how you want to break it out, the different sections, the different aspects of it, and then it'll make a great rubric for you. I've done videos about that in the past as well, but here's a prompt that will help you with the creation of that. Along with that, you want to make sure that you're thinking about AI as well, because that's a new reality that we all face. So if there are some aspects of how AI could be used within the assignment, within the instructions, then make sure that you explain that. Yes, I want you to use AI for this part of the assignment, or no, you're not allowed to use AI for this. Include that within the instruction, include that within the actual rubric. That's what I've started doing, in that within the rubric, I'll make a statement that, hey, if you want this to be 100%, if you want to get excellent on this assignment, there needs to be, I need to clearly see and understand that you didn't use AI or that you incorporated it in this way. Again, make sure that the instructions are clear and the rubric is clear as well. A question dealing with the course resulted in substantial learning, that comes from the student fully understanding what all that they learned. Ensure that you are summarizing. When you cover an SLO and when they do some sort of summative assessment, make sure that you express that, again, explicitly. Hey, you just learned how to do this. Hey, you just gained this skill. Do that periodically throughout your course, and then especially at the very end, before they do the end of course evaluations. Give them an opportunity to see that, hey, they have now gained all these different skills and they can use these skills in different ways. Make sure that you've given them opportunities to actually apply those skills to succeed in using them in many different ways, whether it's through formative assessments or summative assessments, making sure that they can see and understand, yes, I've accomplished this, yes, I've gained these skills, and yes, I've accomplished these student learning outcomes. So there has been a substantial amount of learning and education that has been accomplished. In the next section of what's typical for a lot of end of course evaluations deals specifically with the instructor. So questions dealing with manages the course effectively, engages students. These are all important things that we have to ensure that we're doing. And this comes by having an active classroom, right? A classroom where I'm using student-centered instruction, where I'm being inclusive, I'm making sure that I'm treating everyone the same, and I'm properly managing everything that's going on in that classroom, setting up a great environment where they can approach me, where they can express themselves. Also, AI can help with this. If we are having issues or there's management situations, behavioral issues, we can also turn to the AI and say, hey, I'm having this issue. What are some possibilities of things that I can do, actions that I can take to help address this issue. And it'll come up with a lot of different suggestions. So here's an example of a prompt that can be used. I'll be sure to put this in the comments as well. So through that, I can learn different things as far as I can manage my class more effectively if I am being active. People sometimes don't understand that you're actually managing the classroom by engaging them in active learning. So if I'm asking students questions throughout my presentation, if I'm doing different activities, well, then there's less opportunities for the students to lose focus. There's less opportunities for the students to become bored. Why? Because they're being actively engaged. So that's a great way to manage the class. That's a great way for them to feel engaged and then to express that on the end of course evaluations as well. Other aspects that might get asked in end of course evaluations deals with responding to students' inquiries, making sure that you're caring about the students. These are very important, and those comes through your interactions with them. So again, that explicit aspect is really important here. Being able to give good feedback, being able to talk to your students, that's an important skill. AI can assist with that by helping us to come up with good feedback, by giving us ideas on what type of feedback would be appropriate for different things, or helping us to create rough draft of emails to respond to inquiries. Those are all great things that an AI can help us with. Other questions such as being available outside of class. Yes, for sure, you need to have office hours that are clearly posted, as well as being as flexible as possible, because sometimes students might not be able to get there on time to talk to you outside of class. So having some flexibility in that would be very important. Also important with that, though, is that they understand the communication mechanism. And so it takes two to be part of that. So they know that, hey, you're going to be responding officially through emails. So they need to be checking their emails. That's an important part. Also, they need to know that, hey, if they send me an email at 2 in the morning, I might not respond until later the next day. So they need to be aware of that also. Another aspect of what could be addressed in end of course evaluations deals with a question of whether the course was well organized, whether it was managed well and put together well. Another important thing for us to think about is putting that class together. We have to make sure that everything is logical, it makes sense, and that we're coming across as being organized. This is another place where AI can really help us by ensuring that we have good, proper course alignment. We have that SLO, we're using backwards design, we have the SLO. These are the things that we want our students to learn. And then we're also thinking about, well, how are they going to be assessed in the proper way, formative and summative assessments, and then the pedagogy that we're using for the learning activities. AI can help us in each aspect of that. Help you simply ask the AI, help me come up with questions dealing with this type of topic in this type of class at this type of level. Again, here's a prompt that could be used for that. And then that could help you with the questions that you're being asked, that you're going to be asking them. And then with pedagogies, in the same way, AI is very powerful with this. You can just ask it, hey, give me some ideas, some different possibilities of how I can use active learning to really engage my students for this type of topic. It'll give you lots of different ideas, some of which you've probably been exposed to, others that you might not have been exposed to. That will then allow you to use that, integrate that into your class so that it can be organized in such a way that you're presenting the information in a way that's really engaging. Another question is whether the class was motivating, whether it inspired me to learn, right? That's one that often gets asked. This is a powerful way that AI can really assist us. Here's a prompt that I would highly recommend. This is using Keller's ARCS model of motivation. This is a great one to use in education because it's nice and simple and it breaks things out into a simple categories of A, meaning that we are grabbing their attention, right? So that they are paying attention, they're focused on us and we're maintaining that. Other one dealing with relevancy, we talked about how important that is. Another one dealing with confidence, meaning that they're confident in me as an instructor, as well as in their capability to go through the class. And then satisfaction, meaning that they think that this is time well spent. Asking the AI to help you to address each one of these motivational factors is something that I highly recommend. And you'll get a lot of great results to help you, but remember to use a good prompt formula and be specific in the way that you're asking. This way the AI can give you some really good results. And then the final one would be where the students would be exposed to just offer any type of comments. A big thing here is that we're telling the student that, hey, we want their comments. We need their comments because we're going to use the information that they provide to us in order to improve the class overall for the next group. So we have to be explicit in telling them that, hey, we want this information from them because it is going to be used and it is going to be an important part of the overall developmental process for myself as an instructor as well as for the course. But you need to be ensuring that the students understand that. Be sure to check out another video that goes along with this in how to interpret the end of course evaluations, which is a very important aspect as well, because end of course evaluations, they aren't the end all be all, but they do provide an important data point that will help us to understand how we're doing with teaching and learning overall. Again, just one data point. We need to have multiple ones, such as an observation by a peer, an observation by someone like a program chair, or even someone from the Center of Teaching and Learning. That can give us another great perspective. And of course, evaluations are very important and they do serve a great function. By putting all of this together, this should really help with the overall end of course evaluations. If you enjoyed this information, you got something from it, please be sure to subscribe, like, and share so that we can continue to develop this community. And remember, learning is for life.